Joining us now, we have Rainey Reitman of the EFF, or the Electronic Frontier Foundation. She's the activism director over there. Rainey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's get right to this. On uh, Friday afternoon, President Obama held a press conference to discuss basically what is the growing concern, both in the public and in the press, of the NSA's massive surveillance program. And information continues to come out on this. New revelations continue to be published. And you put up a post on the EFF's website, EFF.org, that basically went through Obama's four commitments that he mentioned in this press conference to basically be more transparent and possibly reform the NSA's program so that the public feels more comfortable with it. Really quick though, let's begin with what was your takeaway? What was your opinion on Obama's speech on the NSA surveillance programs on Friday?
Well, just, without getting into the details, what Obama did was he stood up and he acknowledged that there is a lot of public discomfort with the leaks that have been made public about what the National Security Agency is doing. And even though he was promising that he was going to take steps to reform the programs and become more transparent, he did not at any point actually say, hey, we're going to be reducing the amount of spying that we're doing domestically, much less internationally, which is a whole other can of worms. But even as far as it goes for collecting, for example, the call records of Americans, he didn't make any specific promises of reducing the amount of data collection that's currently going on that collects information on everyday Americans who aren't suspected of any particular crime. So while it is disappointing that he didn't take this opportunity to say, yes, we are, in fact, definitely going to be reining in the surveillance so that we are collecting less information, he did at least acknowledge that people are uncomfortable with it and to make several very specific promises about what he was going to do to try to reform the programs and bring more transparency.
All right, so let's go right into those. Great segue. Let's go right into those promises that he somewhat made, I guess. But you pointed out that there's plenty missing in these four specific commitments. Let's get with right to number one. Obama will work with Congress to pursue appropriate reforms to Section 215 of the Patriot Act. Can you explain what that is and what Section 215 of the Patriot Act is?
Right, definitely. So the Patriot Act was passed very quickly after 9/11. It was a huge package of initiatives that would further empower the government to do a variety of things, including greater surveillance. Section 215 of the Patriot Act is known as the business records section. It allows the government to collect information that is tangible and relevant to an authorized investigation. The current court order that was signed by the FISA Court, which allows for the collection of all of our phone records, all Verizon business phone records, was the order that was leaked, both now and going forward for 3-month periods. That is an order that is supposedly authorized under Section 215 of the Patriot Act. Now, the authors of the Patriot Act have actually come forward and said, when we wrote the Patriot Act, we didn't think that anyone was going to use that particular section to try to drag in all of these records that don't, from our appearance, seem to be relevant to an authorized investigation. And there have been a number of bills introduced into Congress that attempt to address how Section 215 is getting broadly interpreted. So what Obama is saying is that he's going to be pursuing appropriate reforms to this section of the law. Now, I think what's important for people to understand is that there are a lot of people who are introducing pieces of legislation, and it's unclear just how effective those pieces of legislation are going to be in actually preventing this type of surveillance from taking place. It's a difficult issue. I think a strict interpretation of Section 215 would not allow for the current forms of surveillance, which makes it particularly troublesome that they think they even need to reform the law to stop it from happening.
And
But the other thing that's
what's
really
also
important to know is
uh,
that there's many other laws that need to get reformed. It's not just Section 215.
what's interesting too is his vague usage of the term appropriate reforms. Like there was no explanation as to what appropriate reforms he would even approach.
Absolutely. He didn't say we're going to roll back Section 215 so that there are now no more additional surveillance rights than there were previous to 9/11. He's not saying we're going to remove Section 215 authorities. And he didn't say I'm going to ensure that Section 215 can't be used for mass surveillance. He didn't say any of those things. He just said this vague, oh, we're going to pursue appropriate reforms. We're going to work with Congress. So I don't know if we can put a lot of faith into that particular promise. I mean, I'm glad to hear that he's at least interested in working on those reforms and won't block them. But really, the devil's going to be in the details.
And you also point out how he also did not address in the Patriot Act, Section 702, which you mentioned is the statute that the government cites to support the broader surveillance, such as the content of communications.
Right. So many of the people who are particularly troubled by the leaks that have come out are often very troubled by the PRISM program, which was the big leak that came out that showcased how the government is working with various internet providers, the degree to which is pretty unclear still at this point, but among other things, that they're able to access content of internet communications as well as the sort of even information like, what websites you might be clicking on and internet traffic more generally.
Mm-hmm.
So while I think there's still particular questions that remain about how that program works, that program is authorized under a wholly different section of law, to the extent it is even authorized, and that is Section 702 of the FISA Amendments Act. No congressperson has put forward any legislation that would actually rein in that form of surveillance. And Obama did not stand up and say that he was going to do anything to reform or even add more transparency to that process.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to commitment number 2, where Obama said that he will work with Congress to improve public confidence in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court by creating a public advocate that can defend privacy in the court. Now, to me, this one sounds good, but you again greatly point out that it shouldn't be so excited quite yet, even though it's a good start.
Right. Of the promises that Obama made, this is by far the most promising.
Uh-huh.
So for the people out there who aren't familiar, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court was established back in the 70s, and it's supposed to provide oversight to when the government wants to get warrants to surveil suspected foreign intelligence agents outside of the United States. But as we have seen, largely as a result of these leaks, much of the surveillance that is getting signed off on by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court affects people here in the United States as well. So right now, this is a very secretive court. Their rulings are not made public. The briefs are not made public. The decisions are not made public. And you and I can't go and find out what's happening. And in fact, it's just the government and the judge. There's no opposing side. There's no adversarial person who's there trying to defend what the private citizen, what the public interest is. It's not really a traditional court at all. So this really has been an affront to the democratic principles of a fair court from the beginning. And the decision to actually put somebody in there to defend the other side, to say, hey, I'm representing the public's point of view, and I think this is overstepping boundaries, could be very, very powerful. However, we have our doubts about exactly how effective it's going to be. I think any public advocate in there is going to have at least the same sort of independence that a public defender would have, where they would, and they'd ought to be able to get full access to all the materials that the government is presenting to defend their case. And I think we would need to know whether or not that public advocate is going to be available in every of the court proceedings. He used some really weird wiggle language when he discussed it. He said that they would have a defendant in appropriate cases. I certainly hope that means in all cases, because all cases are appropriate to have both sides of the argument argued.
Again, he uses that term appropriate reforms, appropriate cases. I mean, it's so arbitrary. Who determines what's appropriate?
Right, exactly. I think that unfortunately, many people saw this commitment and got very excited, but didn't drill down on exactly what it was he was promising to deliver.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to point 3. Obama has directed the intelligence community to make public as much information about these programs as possible. Now, you just mentioned in discussing point 2 that, I mean, we have these secret courts, and then these secret courts are creating these secret laws. So, I mean, how are we to even know that this information that they make public is with these secret laws? How do we even know they're even letting us know about everything? I mean, I'm going to assume whatever's leaked so far is just we'll make that stuff public, but they still don't know about whatever hasn't been leaked. So what's pulling our arm there to make that public?
Right. I think there are two really concerning things here. The first is that he said that as much information about these programs as possible. And the first question is, well, these programs, but what other programs has he not instructed the NSA to be more public about? Is it possible that they could interpret that directive as not forcing them to be as public as possible about all programs, but only certain programs? And then the other thing is the as possible. You know, as possible is really a subjective statement. I think that often the intelligence community argues that in order to maintain security, they've got to have extreme levels of secrecy to do their jobs and engage in their surveillance. We've heard them make that argument numerous times over the years. So there's this fear that they will say something like, well, we are being as public as possible, but in order to maintain national security, we really can't be very public at all. Mm-hmm. Obama specifically asked them to put up a website that would explain what they were and were not collecting. And so I guess we'll wait and see whether or not that website really has some substantive information in it. And he also asked the NSA to appoint a full-time civil liberties and privacy officer to be in charge of ensuring that the NSA doesn't overstep its boundaries with regards to civil liberties. I can't believe that they're just deciding to do that now in 2013 rather than years ago. But at least I suppose that's a good step in the right direction as well.
Here's also hoping that website has another kids' corner to try to explain to kids that the NSA is a great organization that does great things.
Right, exactly.
Let's get to the fourth point here. Obama is creating a high-level group of outside experts to review our entire intelligence and communications technologies. What is this group?
That's a good question. So this group, he didn't say exactly what it was, but he did say that they were going to make an interim report in 60 days and a full report by the end of the year, which makes me think he's going to move quite quickly on putting this group together. He didn't say if it was a board, if it was an existing board. For example, he's got the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, which is a small, perhaps under-resourced, perhaps under-empowered board, which he has previously tasked with looking into the NSA. And then it's not clear, is this board going to be independent? Will it have adequate subpoena power? Is it going to have staff time? Is it going to have resources? Is it going to even have any political clout so that they're taken seriously? So I'm not certain exactly what this board means and whether or not we can take this really as a positive step. Ultimately, if we really want to get to the bottom of the National Security Agency's surveillance, we need Congress to engage in full investigations of what they're doing. Congress has a ton of power. Congress can subpoena individuals and force them to get on the record and respond to the public and answer questions. A outside group of experts is never going to have the same kind of power that a congressional committee has to investigate what the NSA is doing.
My co-producer, Michael, has a quick question.
Hi, Rainey.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask you, because I felt like another huge thing that you talk about in your piece that was not, Obama didn't get a question about at the press conference, which in my mind shifts the whole terrain of this discussion from, speculative abuses to very clearly actual abuses was the Reuters report that some of these NSA intercepts are getting shared with the DEA and other federal agencies, which already kind of violates that sharp distinction between terrorism investigations and others. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Well, so that wasn't something that Obama addressed during this particular press conference.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that to the extent that he's going to ensure that there aren't abuses of interagency sharing of information, that isn't something that he got up and made any commitments to. I think that's something that, if these are actually effective reforms, potentially the high-level group of outside experts that he's supposedly convening is going to be able to put forward certain recommendations around that. I do think that people are always concerned when agencies that didn't collect information are getting access to it or trying to get access to it. I think that's a major issue. I want to say that it's the point of collection, the collecting of information on Americans who aren't accused of any crime or even suspected of any crime, that is actually a point of concern in and of itself, regardless of which agencies do and do not get access to it. So there's a couple of different issues to kind of tease out there. But as far as whether or not Obama has responded to it, he just didn't bring it up, really.
He completely just
Yeah, it
ignored
just
it,
seemed
yeah.
really significant.
So let's just get back to what was mentioned really quickly. Just two more points I want to bring up from Obama's press conference. One was that he did acknowledge benefits of privacy technology like encryption, but I thought this was very interesting, coming, I believe, less than a day after the encryption email service that Edward Snowden used, LavaBit, was shut down because of reasons that the owner of the company can't even talk about. I mean, could you speak to that?
Right. So there were two different email service providers that provided very private emails, LavaBit and then Silent Circle's email provider.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them shut down last week. And LavaBit said, we are not even allowed to discuss why it is we're getting shut down. One presumes they're under some form of court order, which I would not speculate upon. And so their hands are tied, and they're literally shutting down their entire email service. So if you had email with them, your emails are inaccessible, as far as I know. You literally cannot get in there and get access to your old emails, rather than presumably responding to whatever government request they got. And Silent Circle's email provider saw the writing on the wall, they said, and followed suit about a day later, also shutting down the email accounts of all of their users.
Jeez.
As far as, Obama's statement, I think it's interesting because up until now, the Obama administration, as well as higher ups within Congress and within the intelligence community, have pushed very hard to get backdoor access to encrypted technologies. And they have said that they are, quote unquote, going dark, that technology is getting very complex and they're going dark. They're not going to be able to get into these technologies the way they'd like to, even when they have court approval. And so they need all technologies to build a backdoor for the government in case later down the road they might want to get into them. So it's very interesting for me to know that that's on his agenda as far as what he's attempting to achieve politically and legislatively in the coming years, and at the same time have him say something vaguely to the effect of, technology itself could be a safeguard to prevent the government from surveilling you. I think that that's certainly not the only solution out there, but, the Electronic Frontier Foundation has long said that you should be using technology to protect yourself, and that's technology like encryption. We have a free Firefox add-on called HTTPS Everywhere, which is one very small and very easy step you can take to protect yourself, but also encrypted chat, such as off-the-record chat, PGP on your email. There's a whole bunch of options out there. They're not all easy, but they're definitely worth investigating if you're concerned about your privacy.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, I just want to end it with what Obama had to say about Edward Snowden, which I thought was very interesting because he himself even admitted that while he wanted to give himself the props of having the agenda in mind of bringing this to the public's knowledge in terms of having a discussion about these things, he admitted that Edward Snowden pushed him towards bringing this stuff to the forefront much quicker, and he also made sure to say that Edward Snowden is no patriot regardless. I mean, the fact that that conference that he was having was straight up because of Edward Snowden, this conversation you and I are having are straight up because of Edward Snowden. I mean, to call him a patriot or not, fine, but just to downplay Edward Snowden's role was to me just ridiculous after he himself admitting what Edward Snowden's role in pushing him to talk about this was.
Yeah, that was a really interesting moment in the press conference. I was very confused when Obama said, I myself have initiated a number of reforms and we were going to move ahead with them even if Snowden hadn't jumped the gun by leaking this information. So my understanding is that, Obama's previous promises around transparency reform had been really defensive comments after different leaks and different exposés. So there's no question that the reporting of Greenwald and Poitras of Edward Snowden's leaks has been incredibly instrumental to kickstarting this public debate. And certainly the information is going to be really important to getting people to understand exactly how much surveillance is happening to everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, there was nothing preventing Obama over the many years he's been president from just publishing information about how much surveillance is taking place so that people could find out about it and decide whether or not they are comfortable with it. He could still do that if he wanted to, instead of forcing us to find out about it in leaks, with whistleblowers coming forward at huge personal risk to speak truth to power.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
Edward Snowden wasn't even the first NSA whistleblower. I mean, we had
saddened by that. Yeah.
I mean, and Edward Snowden wasn't even the first NSA whistleblower. Like we've had Thomas Drake on this show. I mean, if he had a real problem with this, he's had plenty of time to at least make some sort of statement about it before Edward Snowden, and he just didn't.
Yeah, he did not. Well, and I would say that Edward Snowden also said that he didn't want this to be about him. He wanted it to be about the information that went out there. So I've often said let's focus on the facts, the information that was made public, and what the repercussions are for civil liberties and for the American people and for people all over the world, quite frankly, rather than getting down into the personal politics of is he a patriot or isn't he a patriot? The fact is, the American public needed to know this stuff, and now we do.
And what's also interesting, and a completely sort of not in this realm note, what they've done to try to apprehend him in terms of what happened to the president of Bolivia's plane in Europe. I mean, I think personally Edward Snowden is not the conversation, but definitely what the government's tried to do to him is certainly speaks to the NSA's mass surveillance campaign.
Yes, I think that there is a lot of concern about what's going to happen to Snowden next. I was particularly interested to see that during the press conference, Obama stated that he had enacted reforms for whistleblowers. And I'm not a whistleblower expert by any means, but my understanding of the whistleblower reforms that he put into place is that they were specific to government employees and would not cover contractors such as Snowden, which leaves a lot of questions to be, again, I'm not...
That's true, they wouldn't.
Certain of that.
That's absolutely true.
That's my understanding based on what I've read. And so, I think we should take some of his promises with a bit of a grain of salt as far as his responses to Snowden goes.
Rainey Reitman, activism director at EFF. Folks, go to EFF.org. They're a great organization. They work on great things, everything from digital civil liberties to the NSA surveillance to even things that affect this show. Saving podcasts, yes, with podcast patent trolls. Rainey Reitman, thank you so much for joining us today.